We're on red alert for Sunday's game against the Falcons because Russell Wilson is dealing with calf stiffness. There's a chance he's in jeopardy, that he could be out for this game. But it sounds the alarm for Justin Fields, and maybe it's not just for this week. Maybe it's for the season going forward, and maybe we need to strategize around him versus the other pool of quarterbacks, especially those back-end quarterbacks that might be rostered in your league, because there's a lot of upside here. So today we're going to deep dive Justin Fields. We're going to deep dive the situation. We're going to look at the short-term and long-term effects of Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and the offense. But before we do all that, you need to click that subscribe button right now. Just move that thumb over a little bit. Click that button because we're doing deep dives every day. The top guys on the waiver wire, those guys climbing the depth chart, a change in situation, news. We're going to go deep into the news, the facts, the data, the advanced analytics, so you know more about the situation of players so you can make your decision. But it broke out late last night. Russell Wilson dealing with calf tightness. He was dealing with this calf in training camp. He started late in training camp. He eventually came back. He looked good once he got warmed up and limbered after a few practices. And the thing is, when he was out, Justin Fields was cooking in practice. Once we got to the preseason games, it was a little bit different. And on top of this, when you look at the preseason games, you look at the offensive line, the time to throw, Russell Wilson starting the season dealing with a calf issue. That is not a good look. That's not a good look. So are you betting on Russell Wilson playing a full 17 games this year? Are you betting on that? Or are you going to bet that Justin Fields come in sometime down the line? Maybe it's this week. Maybe it's around Halloween. Maybe it's next week. Maybe it's around Thanksgiving. Are you going to make that bet with your roster? Can you make that bet? But we're looking into this. But Justin Fields, when he's on the field, he is a quarterback one. He averages 18.6 PPR points per game. PPR doesn't matter for quarterbacks, but still, he's a QB1 throughout his career. And this is in Chicago with him barely throwing the ball with just 24 pass attempts per game. The back end last year, it increased a little bit, but still 24 pass attempts per game, averaged out as a quarterback one in fantasy football. So he does not have to be good passing the ball to really give you those QB1 numbers. There could be volatility at times, but still, when you go back, you look at the numbers here for fantasy football, the dude is getting it done, and he does not have to throw it a lot. But when you look at the rushing yards per game, this is where the meal is cooked for you in fantasy football, because he's going to take off and run with it. He's going to get you 4, 5 points at least extra rushing. But there's also games where he'll get you 17, 14, 13, 10, 9 extra fantasy points on the ground on top of what he's throwing, on top of the touchdowns. That is something you want out of your quarterback for fantasy. He doesn't have to be a good NFL quarterback for fantasy. He just has to be on the field, and he's going to score you fantasy points. You look at the wide receivers here. Mainly it's George Pickens, and he's left. He's got a rapport with Justin Fields from back in high school. They talked about that in the media earlier this offseason. They looked good together in training camp. They're like peas and carrots. Jenny and Forrest Gump. Those two go together. And I bet George Pickens would pick Justin Fields because those guys were going off together every day in practice, and he's going to target George Pickens a lot. George Pickens is going to get his 5+ targets a game, more like 6, 7, 8. They're going to be deep balls. He's going to get fueled. It may not always be accurate. He may not always have the time to throw. And when the pocket breaks down, we know Justin Fields is going to go off with it. He's going to run. He's going to get you those yards. And it doesn't matter to us if it's good or bad for football. It matters if it scores fantasy points. He targets the running back 16% of times. He goes to the wide receiver on 45% of his pass attempts. 20% of his targets go to the tight end. And they're working in their tight ends with Freiermuth and Darnell Washington per preseason and training camp. That might change in season. We don't have the data on that because obviously we haven't played any games. 227 air yards a game. That might increase because now you got George Pickens and he's loving it. He's loving it. 7.1 average depth of target when he's throwing the ball. He pushes it deep. He wants to push it deep. He wants to look deep. But also, time to throw is going to impact everything here. But when you're looking at fantasy production, it may not even matter for this guy. And here's the strategy here. So say you got an elite quarterback and then you waited to one of your last picks in the draft to get another quarterback and you're stuck with like a Danny Dimes, a Drake May, and you're waiting on him, or Bo Nix, Derek Carr. One of those typical waiver wire quarterbacks that you're just stashing because, you know, you got to have a backup. You know, you got to have that backup. I suggest not having a backup, going with one quarterback, and if that quarterback goes down, just playing the waiver wire. Or you can go with this strategy. Say your backup quarterback goes down, and this is if you got like a stud quarterback. You're not streaming two good quarterbacks, and you got a stud quarterback and then a jabroni quarterback, and say you just cut that jabroni quarterback, you go with Justin Fields, and you use that as a lottery ticket quarterback because you know if something happens and Justin Fields sees the field, that's a quarterback one. That's a guy that can get you 20, 30, 40 fantasy points in a week. We saw that. We just covered that. We saw that multiple times. That was with the Bears. We talk about how bad he was with the Bears all the time. Everybody does. You can't escape it from the media. Colin Cowherd, whoever it is on ESPN that's talking, they talk about that. But you see the fantasy production. It's there. That's what you're wanting. That's probably what you're going to get when he's on the field because he has a history of showing it. So why not take that gamble with a position that's not really a gamble on your depth chart here, and you're just hoarding and waiting, especially if you got a top-tier quarterback and you just got another quarterback there as a lottery ticket, and if he gets his opportunity, you got some gusto there. Maybe a trade piece even to get you a running back or a wide receiver. Maybe. Something to look at. You don't need him because you're only going to roster one quarterback. And that is my suggestion, is to roster one quarterback and load up at wide receiver and running back. Get them stashes. But if you're going to stash a quarterback, he's your guy. He's your YOLO play. Because if he comes out on the field, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get some upside, and you're going to chase that. He does not have to be a good quarterback. He can throw interceptions. He can fumble. He can mess up with the center all he wants. He's going to run the ball. He's going to get you that upside. We already saw it with Chicago. We already saw he's going to make plays happen. It's going to be a weird construction of fantasy football production, Tim Tebow style, and he could step it up and be good because he has shown that in flashes before. He showed that in training camp, all training camp long, and he can lock in with George Pickens all he wants and have fun. I don't care if he's good. I don't care if he's bad. I just need him to score fantasy points, and I know there's a high probability of that happening if he's on the field, and there's a high probability that he's going to be on the field somewhere down the line. Can you stash him? Can you roster him? Should you do that? That's a question with your roster, and if you can, it's going to be hard right now in week 1, but you might be looking at that, especially waiting on quarterback a little bit. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.